TLC didn't file a lawsuit. They didn't hold a press conference. They walked into a record label with a getaway limo, kicked Diddy out of a meeting with Clive Davis, and locked the building down. This wasn't a publicity stunt. This wasn't for shock value. This was a full-on hostile takeover, led by 3 women who had been pushed to the edge. At the center of it all, Lisa Left Eye Lopes, the heartbeat of TLC and the mind behind the madness. She wasn't just fed up. She was ready to burn it all down to get what they deserved, and what happened next didn't just rattle the music industry, it exposed it. By the time Crazy Sexy Cool dropped, TLC had taken over the world. They weren't just topping charts. They were changing culture, their look, their sound, their message. They were bold, sexy, and untouchable. At least that's how it looked. Behind the scenes, it was a very different story. Despite generating $75 million in sales, each member received just $50,000. Think about that. That's less than a teacher's salary for the biggest girl group on Earth. Lisa, T-Boz, and Chile were living in apartments with no furniture, driving secondhand cars, and constantly hearing they were in debt to the label, even though the label was making millions. And that's when the illusion shattered. TLC wasn't rich. They were being robbed. Lisa didn't take betrayal lightly. She'd already been through fire, literally. After her infamous incident with football player Andre Racin's mansion, Lisa had spent time in a diversion center, a place meant to rehabilitate. But instead of being broken down, she met women who taught her a different kind of strength, women who knew survival, women who didn't wait for permission, women who moved like soldiers. Lisa came out sharper, louder, and more focused. She wasn't trying to play the victim anymore. She was ready to go get what was hers. So when the royalty checks came in, and she saw $50,000 staring back at her, she made a call. We're not waiting. We're going straight to the top. And she meant it literally. TLC didn't walk into Arista Records quietly. They stormed it. Lisa gathered her crew, including women she met while locked up, women who had nothing to lose, and headed for New York City. T-Boz and Chile backed her, riding shotgun in what would become one of the most legendary moments in music history. They didn't call ahead. They didn't knock. They burst into the building, marched to the executive floors, and ripped their names off the walls. Platinum plaques, posters, awards, everything TLC had ever earned. They took it back, and sitting in a meeting with Clive Davis that day, Sean Puffy Combs, the same Puffy who was just starting his rise, the same Puffy who would later become a billionaire, and one of the most controversial names in entertainment. He got booted like a nobody. T-Boz's cousin handed him a tape and said, "Meeting's over, TLC's got the floor now." Clive Davis, the man who built Arista Records, was used to respect. He worked with Whitney Houston. He discovered legends. But when TLC showed up, they didn't show fear. They showed fire. Lisa stood face to face with him and demanded answers. "We made you $75 million. You gave us chump change. Where's the money?" One of the women stood guard outside the door, locking down the office like it was a scene out of a movie. Nobody got in. Nobody got out. And Puffy? He ran. He called from a safe distance and told Clive, "Yo, B, your girl's up here mad bugging." When police arrived at the scene, Clive had 2 options: call the media, press charges, and let the world know TLC just pulled a power move on him, or handle it quietly and avoid headlines. He chose silence. TLC walked out that day with no handcuffs, no arrests, and a deal on the table. It wasn't perfect, it was still recoupable, but it was better. The industry was shaken, and the message was clear. TLC wasn't the group you controlled. They were the ones you negotiated with. If you were lucky. Years later, something strange happened on national TV. Rosie O'Donnell made a joke about Puffy. Lauryn Hill's got 4 Grammy nominations. TLC's got 8. Sean Combs, 5 to 10. A jail joke. The crowd laughed. But Chile? She exploded. That laugh? It wasn't nervous. It wasn't fake. It was a release. Because what most people didn't know was that Chile had once dated Usher, and Usher had once lived with Diddy as a teenager. At just 14, Usher was sent to live in Diddy's New York apartment by Lopes Records, a move that raised more questions than answers. What he saw there He's never fully explained, but years later, he admitted it was wild, that he saw things no kid should see. And Chile? She heard it all. Usher's hospitalization during his early years raised eyebrows. There were rumors of infections, whispers of abuse, and stories involving Kim Porter, secret tapes, and industry cover-ups. When Chile laughed at that jail joke, it hit different. Because maybe she wasn't laughing at the punchline. Maybe she was laughing at the karma. After she and Usher split, Chile never went near Diddy's orbit again. She didn't name names, she didn't do interviews, but she also never stood next to Diddy again. Not after Lisa's death. Not after the Arista showdown. Not after the rumors turned into lawsuits. Lisa wasn't done after the Arista raid. She had a plan. Go solo. Go deeper. Go dangerous. She signed with Death Row Records, the most feared label in hip-hop history. It wasn't just bold, it was deadly. She was filming a documentary in Honduras called The Last Days of Left Eye, and she wasn't holding back. She talked about energy. She said she was being watched. She talked about a presence that felt off, and then something terrifying happened. While driving through Honduras, Lisa's van accidentally struck and killed a young boy walking on the roadside. His last name? Lopes. Lisa was devastated. On camera, she said, "That spirit wasn't meant for him, it was meant for me." And days later, it came for her. The van flipped. Lisa wasn't wearing a seatbelt. She died on impact. Everyone else survived. Officially, it was a tragic accident. But fans still ask, was it a coincidence that Lisa, the only member willing to confront Clive and Diddy face-to-face, died just as she was making a documentary? Was it random that she was about to drop a solo album on Death Row, one that reportedly mentioned her industry battles, and then never got to finish it? Lisa was fearless. Lisa was asking questions, and Lisa wasn't following the script. Her death closed the chapter before she could tell the final truth, and to this day, we still don't know what she was about to expose. After Lisa's death, TLC kept going. They toured. They shared memories. They told the stories Lisa didn't get to finish. But they also moved differently. No more explosions. No more label raids. Chile stayed quiet. T-Boz stayed cautious. But everyone in the industry remembered that day at Arista. Nobody ever tried TLC again. TLC didn't just change the sound of music. They changed the rules. When every other artist was scared to speak up, they pulled up. When Clive Davis tried to brush them off, they kicked the door in. And when Puffy tried to downplay them, they embarrassed him in front of the whole industry. This wasn't just girl group drama. This was about power. This was about ownership. This was about respect. Lisa Left Eye Lopes wasn't just a performer. She was a force. She didn't whisper. She roared. And her message was simple. We ain't scared of nobody. So the why. Next time someone tries to silence you, remember TLC. Remember that limo full of plaques. Remember that laugh Chile let out on live TV. And remember what happens when you take your power back. Because TLC didn't wait for the industry to save them. They saved themselves. And if you're loving stories that pull back the curtain and tell the real truth behind the music, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe for more, and hit the bell so you never miss a beat. We've got more untold stories, more secrets, and more legends that didn't play by the rules. Just like TLC, because here on this channel, we don't just talk about the past, we expose it.